You're listening to Health Professional Radio. My name is Wayne Buckler, and joining me in conversation today is one of our guests that we've chatted to before and is always a welcome contributor to the station, Dr. Dwyer. Drew, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Wayne. How are you all, fellow listeners?
It's a pleasure to have you with us, and I see you've been putting fingers to the keyboard again. There's a new book.
There is. I've just released and published a new book called Aging in the New Age, a survival guide for baby boomers.
Now, it's time, I think, being one of these baby boomers myself, or at least on the edge of it, it's time I started paying a lot more attention to this. There are a lot of baby boomers.
There are currently, if I just stick to the demographics of Australia, there's 6 million of us, and as a rough guesstimate around the world, you're probably looking at around about 900 million, between probably 6 to 900 million. So nearly 1 billion people aged between the age of 52 and 72. And they currently have if you look at marketing expenditure around the world, they're worth about a $3 trillion plus US dollar budget.
That's an extraordinary blip in the birth rate at one point in history, isn't it?
Yes, well, I mean, the thing to consider is that most of the baby boomers are not that old yet, and still relatively young by concept or by thought and process. But over the next 30 years, we'll be supporting huge numbers of people who will be going through a transition of life, and that is their journey to old age and their pathway to death. And the fact remains that, when we sit and look at it, that death remains one of the factors in life that sit right next to taxes. They're a surety, but the pathway doesn't have to be negative and fruitless, and people who are aging don't have to see it as a negative thing. So positive, healthy, active aging is where I want to have that cohort of people face, look and deal with in their life. So the book is specifically a great book to use as an education and planning tool for baby boomers, or for baby boomers who are trying to transition their older parents at the moment, because they are the great generation and the silent generation that sit above the boomers. There's still many of them left. It's also a great book if you're a younger person, to gift to your parents if you're concerned about having difficult conversations with your boomer parents, because, of course, you and I are both boomers. It'll get a bit touchy when your kids want to talk to you about what nursing home you're going to go to.
Particularly, Drew, when they keep telling me I'm old.
Well, that's right. Well, you're not old until you're 70.
Well, I'm a couple of years past 60, but I have to say I don't feel like I'm old. I don't feel like a 60-year-old should feel, and I don't have the views my father had. When he was 60, he couldn't wait to retire. I can't think of anything worse.
Well, that's right, and I mentioned this in the book. The book's divided up into 9 chapters, and each chapter will be another book that I'm going to release on that specific chapter. And so when you understand boomers and when boomers look at themselves, it's good and positive that they don't see themselves as old. And really, age is nothing but a benchmark. And at the end of the day, most boomers want to remain active. They want to remain engaged. They want to semi-retire, not fully retire. They want to have something that they can engage their lives in as they do get older. So it's not about being old per se. It's about enjoying age, because you're getting to a point in life where you should be able to look and reflect on your life in a different way.
And I have to say, having my mother who's 88 in an aged care home, and my dad who passed away at 94 just a year or so ago, I don't want to have the experience they're having or had. I don't want to go through the process that they're going through now.
No, that's right. I mean, the way I've divided the book up is it's an education tool. And the chapter 1 is about knowing your own generations. And so I educate people around the generations. So we actually know who are the greats, the silents, the boomers, the Gen X, the Gen Ys. And then once we understand that and who we are and where we sit in the timeline, then I move on to the teachings and of growing for an older person about mastering emotional intelligence, which is the psychology of framework around, owning that you're older, being comfortable with being an older person, knowing who you are as a person and knowing your feelings and emotions about being older or retired or semi-retired. And then once we can master that, then I start to discuss the real facts about aging, which is the ugly stuff of science. And then I move on to healthy, active and positive aging. So I revert that away from the horrible things around incontinence and heart failure and medications. We'll move more on to positive stuff. And then chapter 5 talks about the heart has no wrinkles, which is about love, sex, sexuality, and engaging more in sex as we get older. Chapter 6 is dementia, always on your mind, because many elder clients I work with and older people, they have very big fears about the D word, and they shouldn't be. We need to remove the stereotypes that sit on dementia, and we need to understand what dementia is and how we live and grow and progress ourselves through dementia while the science community finds a solution to it. And chapter 7 for me is every penny counts. So I start to focus in on how much it's going to cost you to get old and die. Because as I said, as you get older, it's going to cost you to live longer. And without an income, you're going to have to plan and you're going to have to sort your stuff out really quick. Many elderly that I work with in a transition are quite unprepared, and financial burden becomes a big risk for them. And then I walk through the next stage, which is aging and spirituality. Many older people our age, particularly, they get to the point where they want to know more, connect with more. It's that self-actualization process. And generally, Wayne, too many people these days are corrupting people, looking for the great life, the cappuccinos on the beach, look at me, spiritual connection, and these are dangerous rabbit holes to go down. Yes. As for many elderly people, because we need to remain stable as we get old, because we are more or less figureheads of other family members, and it's not about finding God. It's about finding your connection and your place and being comfortable in the universe. And I think many elderly need to focus on that rather than wearing cheesecloths and an amethyst around their neck and then becoming Buddha. And then I finally lead the book into the final chapter, which is about death, the final curtain. And I have very deep discussions or clear discussions around what dying and death looks like and how to plan yourself around it, because it's coming and it's going to happen. And what I experience as a gerontological nurse in the palliative area is that many people are so unprepared for this and do not face it. And that emotional intelligence in the book comes back into it, where we have to accept where we're going, Wayne. We have to understand it's a part of our life journey. And if you want a respectful, good death, then you better plan for one. And I absolutely understand that almost all of those chapters are the difficult conversations for people to participate in, either as the initiator of the conversation, having it with your parents, or as the parent, having it with a child. Eagerly looking forward to getting my teeth into this book, and I know our reviewers are looking forward to having a read of it as well. Yeah, good. I also wrote it too because a lot of my colleagues, even though we're health professionals, we're nurses, we're social scientists, we're counsellors, a lot of my colleagues strike me all the time because I have a trained skill in it. Drew, teach me how I can have these conversations with my patients or my clients. And these are confrontational subjects. And in particular, if we don't have a client who has got good health literacy, one of the factors of good health care, they can be narrow-minded, they can be denial, they can be very, it's very hard to talk as a health professional to a client who's in denial. If you haven't got that connection therapeutically to bring them across a knowledge transfer. And so I designed this book as a layman's book. So I haven't made it an academic book, which has been a difficult thing to do as an academic. So it's a dumbed-down version. I know a lot of my colleagues will be looking and going, oh, it's not very academic. But I didn't design it for them or us. I designed it more or less, and it's being used this way, which I'm very happy for. Some organisations are just buying the book and handing it to their clients and saying, we want you to read this book and then come and talk to us. Or I want you to read this book as we work together to get the best outcomes in your journey in health. Yes. Because these are tough conversations, Wayne, and they are difficult to have. And I believe if we can empower the boomer, the older person, the family, the individuals, we get better partnership. And that means that we break all the barriers down and the stereotypes. And for me, really, at the moment, too, the world's moving and the pendulum's swinging very heavily left, and it's all about feelings and things. They're great, that's wonderful, but at the end of the day, there are facts, there are science, and there are things that we have to face. Yes. And for a health professional, these are tough discussions to have with patients. So I hope the book helps. Drew, I'm sure it will, and we'll come back and talk again about it in some more detail. But
Tell me, how do people get hold of the book now?
Well, people can order my book either online. They can go to my website, which is www.dr-drew.com. They can order it through Lulu, Amazon, and any of the major book places, but mainly Lulu. And it's available for $12.95 Australian as an ebook and $19.95 as a paperback. Now, if they buy from me directly at my personal website, I will autograph and sign and put a little private message in there for the person.
Well, that's an incentive to buy it from your website, if ever I heard one.
Correct. It's www.dr-drew.com.
Drew, it's been fabulous having a chat with you again. I always appreciate the wisdom you bring to our conversations. Thank you for sharing some time with us today.
Yeah, good on you, Wayne. Thanks, and thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen. And I hope we can have a chat on some of the chapters later on.
Now, if you've come late to our conversation with Dr. Drew Dwyer about his new book, the good news is on our website we have a full transcript. There's also an audio archive of the interview on SoundCloud and YouTube. You're listening to Health Professional Radio. My name is Wayne Buckler.